Daisy Ridley is refusing to engage in feminist attacks on the Star Wars fan base. It is quite a breath of fresh air, given the fact that we have seen Charmin Obaid-Chinoy crouch all of her promotion for the upcoming new Jedi Order film in feminist messaging. And obviously, the Star Wars in general has had the Force is female push in their products and has beat people over the head with their feminist messaging in their marketing. Before we get into this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. Let's get into this over here at thatparkplace.com. Indeed, Daisy Ridley is rejecting the feminist attacks and saying things get blown out of proportion. Let's just get into this here. We'll watch this over on Twitter. She made an appearance on the Today Show earlier this week where she briefly touched on Star Wars. And then this woman here, of course, the woman in the pink, asks her this question, trying to tee her up to attack Star Wars fans. But let's listen to what the question and then what Daisy Ridley had to say here.
Because there are some of the, I'd say, extreme Star Wars fans who have made this a conversation on the internet about how they don't want a female director, which seems bizarre because episodes of The Mandalorian were directed by females. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy has been overseeing all of this. So, what is your take?
So, yeah, interesting. She calls the people criticizing Star Wars extreme. I beg to differ. I think those probably are your your prime Star Wars fans that Lucasfilm has driven away with their shoddy products, their forces female messaging in those products, and then their absolutely terrible marketing and their attacks on fans throughout the years, whether that be with Obi-Wan, Kenobi, etc. And then the idea that she's saying people don't want a female director, it is quite bizarre because I don't think anyone's really saying that. I think people are saying they don't want Charmin Obaid-Chinoy because she is pushing feminist talking points into her marketing for the film, which we'll get into a little bit later. And that is what the criticism is. It has nothing to do with the fact that they don't want a female director. Obviously, people like a lot of the episodes of The Mandalorian. They have female directors. I do think that people have an issue with the fact that the franchise has been taken in a feminist direction, for sure. And most of the time, the people pushing that feminist direction are females. Obviously, you do have people like J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson that are guilty of that as well. And that's really the criticism. It has nothing really to do with the person's gender. So the question is obviously bait and quite disgusting, completely trying to create a narrative and trying to bait Daisy Ridley into pushing that narrative. But I think Daisy Ridley does a great job of deftly avoiding it and, for all intents and purposes, rejecting it. So let's listen to how Daisy answers here.
I think my take is things get blown out of proportion, and the interactions I've ever had with people have been nothing but wonderful and supportive. And honestly, the day we announced that I was coming back at Celebration last year, you cannot imagine the joy and goodwill in that room. So I've only ever been embraced, and I think we're going to make a great film and people will
We cannot wait.
So that is what Daisy Ridley had to say. I think perfect response. She's not attacking the fans. She's not insulting people. In fact, she's kind of pushing back on that woman when she's like, it's been blown out of proportion. And then she gives her a look like, by people like you. Maybe I'm a little bit reading into that. But who's blowing it out of proportion, right? It's people like this Today Show host that are making up these absurd narratives about what is actually happening. So kudos to Daisy Ridley, I think, for rejecting the feminist attack on Star Wars fans. And I think that will bring goodwill. I'm obviously praising her right now, and hopefully other people will see that. I don't think it's going to convince me to go see the film. I don't think that they've done a really good job with the Rey character. I think the stories she's been a part of have been absolutely terrible. I think they've been anathema to Star Wars, but I'm glad to see her not attacking the fans. And that does endear me to her. It does not endear me to Star Wars and Lucasfilm and everything that they've done. I actually have to see what they're going to do in a product in order to actually change my mind on that. And I haven't really seen anything to change my mind. It's been disaster after disaster after disaster Obi-Wan Kenobi, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka. Now they're bringing back Asajj Ventress in their latest Bad Batch trailer. I mean, it's just terrible story writing after terrible story writing, terrible ideas after terrible ideas. And just to kind of highlight the how different this is from how Charmin Obaid-Chinoy has been promoting the film, she infamously told CNN back on like New Year's, she says, "I'm very thrilled about the project because I think what we are about to create is something very special. And we are in 2024 now, and I think it's about time we had a woman come forward to shape the story in a galaxy far, far away." So clearly promoting it using feminist messaging. It's about time we had a woman. It's obviously in gender identity politics there. And it's bizarre, as the Today Show host even pointed out, because Kathleen Kennedy has been running Lucasfilm since George Lucas sold the company to the Walt Disney Company in 2012. It's been over a decade. And then women have been a part of Star Wars for a very long time. Marsha Lucas obviously won an Oscar. She won an Oscar for her role in editing the original Star Wars film. So it's just utterly stupid and ridiculous and bizarre. It's bizarre that this is the narrative they're trying to push when they're pointing out how there's lots of evidence to dispute their narrative. And it's the Today Show people pushing the narrative, but trying to blame fans for that narrative and twisting what fans are actually saying. And Charmin Obaid-Chinoy was clearly pushing a feminist agenda here. Like, that is what she was doing. And then she told Vice here too. She says, "I've always kicked open doors that were previously closed. And I think my feeling is that there is a critical mass of women who have begun to move forward in places that were previously closed to them." Again, this is all feminist messaging, like doors were closed to them. It's utterly ridiculous. She's talking about Star Wars. Again, Marsha Lucas won an Oscar for the original Star Wars film. I mean, these people like are completely detached from reality, and they're trying to warp reality. They're trying to Thomas Sowell talks about this. They're trying to take their vision of what they want reality to be, and they're trying to warp reality to match that vision. In terms, colloquial terms, we call it gaslighting. They're just basically lying to you to try and spread a narrative that is false. And they have indeed pushed this. And so you've seen Charmin do this multiple times as she's talked about the film. And Daisy Ridley now is saying, no, this is not how I want to talk about this. And she's not choosing to engage in the attacks on fans. And she did this earlier in the week as well. She spoke with Variety's Rebecca Rubin. Rebecca Rubin also tried to bait her, saying, "You're reprising your role as Rey in a new Star Wars movie directed by Charmin Obaid-Chinoy. How will the franchise's first female filmmaker impact the series?" So obviously gender identity already right there. And Ridley said the short answer is, "I don't know. I'm excited to do the job, but not because Charmin is a woman." So Daisy's like, I don't really care that Charmin, what the director's gender is. It doesn't matter to me. She says her documentaries are amazing. Her idea for the story is cool as crap. No spoilers, but she gave me a rundown of the entire story. If it weren't amazing, I would have been like, okay, call me in 5 years, but it's worthwhile. So I find it really refreshing that she is refusing to engage in these attacks, especially because we've seen this from people that work at the Walt Disney Corporation over the past years. It's not just Star Wars. Obviously, Charmin Obaid-Chinoy, the most prominent example of doing this, but obviously Brie Larson is probably the biggest person doing it. We saw Nia DaCosta, the director of the Marvels, doing this as well. So we've seen people do this constantly coming out of the Disney house. So Daisy really refusing to engage in it is, I think, a breath of fresh air. But again, just to reiterate, I do not think that it changes my mind on whether or not Star Wars is going in a good direction. I do not think it is. But let me know what you make of what Daisy Ridley had to say here. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.